Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who has been ignoring of Montreal for well over 25 years. I'm going to be reviewing their album, I Feel Safe With You, Trash, but it's the first time I've ever seriously listened to this band. Now, why is that? My typical reason is that between 2002 and 2018, I didn't listen to any music. When I started this channel, it was an attempt to sort of get back in touch with a thing that means a lot to me, which is modern and popular music. But that's not really an excuse for not having listened to Of Montreal. They were around when I was in college in the 90s. I remember hearing their name. So why do I have a grudge against this band? Why did I not listen to them? Well, it's kind of a silly reason, but I love Canada. I love Canada, and in particular, I love Montreal, and I love Quebec. I am truly a French professor. And I love going to French Canada. And when I heard their name, Of Montreal, before I heard their music, my mind populated with all these ideas. I thought, Of Montreal, what a perfect name. You see, in French, the way you would say that you are from Montreal is you are de Montréal, which would be sort of clumsily translated literally into English into Of Montreal. So I had in my mind this whole idea of a new rock band, an indie rock band that was from Montreal, that was both like kind of English and kind of French, and talked about bilingualism, and there's all these things, kind of like the way I felt when I heard about Bon Iver, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a cool indie band all about like Frenchness, and you know, because Bon Iver means good winter in French. Depeche Mode. If I was back in the 80s, I would have felt the same thing about Depeche Mode. Oh, cool, a band that's French. But I could never forgive de Montréal, of Montreal. that was not intentional. I could never really forgive them when I discovered they were just from Athens, Georgia. Oh, Athens, Georgia. It's just a name they came up with that they thought was cool. And so I took that grudge, and I did something that very stupid people do. I let that grudge rule my thinking without ever checking back in with that grudge. I had this thought, okay, I don't like this band because they're not actually from Montreal, which is a totally stupid thing, and I never thought about it again. I never checked in with it. I never challenged it. And you know, that's part of what this channel is. You know, part of this channel is how do you stay sort of mentally young, right? Because that's a very tough thing to do, especially when you get into your 40s. And what happens is, when you get to your 40s, those kinds of ideas that you have, you develop a sort of a notion, and it sort of fossilizes. And you don't really let anything challenge it, and you don't try to challenge it yourself until you just end up saying ridiculous things like, there's no good rock and roll out there. Rap used to be good, not this mumble stuff. Right? You start saying things like this, and you don't check in with yourself, and you don't challenge it. So I am going back and challenging 19-year-old Skye in 1996, whenever it was that they came out with their first album, and say, hey, Dick, Of Montreal is a good band, and let's actually listen to it. Musically, it's a fascinating album. It is never verse, chorus. It's like verse, other bit. There's all these electronic elements, tons of super warbled keyboards, but the thing I want you to listen to, if you're going to listen to this album, the bass work on this album is as good as any bass work that I have reviewed. And I'm including, you know, the Flying Lotus album, and I'm including Thundercat. Okay, I understand Thundercat's a bass genius and all that, but the bass on this album, this is a masterclass of bass. All the way throughout the album, whenever you think things are going to get too wild and too crazy and too wacky, trash, edge, this bass is going, and it is so unbelievably good. The lyrics, I'll get into them quite in depth. The one problem I had with them, not really a problem, it's more of a question. Are they too smart? So there's a lot of like smart references, but mainly there's the difference between intellect and emotion. And I would say this band fits into that category along with sort of the Talking Heads or Devo, where they're not robotic. It's not like they have no emotions, but it's actually that like their intelligence is definitely what's at the front more than sort of their emotional feeling. But I studied it more, and I think actually this is a more heartfelt album than I initially believed. If I had one complaint about this album, and I do have one complaint about this album, it's too rich, okay? This is one of those chocolate cakes that they serve at bad, what is it? I mean, it's a very good album, but you know that feeling when you get a chocolate cake that's like chocolate with chocolate on top and chocolate chips, and it's like it's good, but you have a couple bites and you just need to just like, this album is long, and every song is filled with like 3 different genres and 10,000 words, and they're all coming out of nowhere, and they just, I had to take a break halfway through. I suspect, however, that if I listen to this album more, I will like it. That will no longer be oppressive. I think part of the problem is I'm listening to this to review it. And when you listen to an album to review it, you're just trying to like kind of get through it and form some ideas. And like every song was like a whole new wave of ideas. So I predict it's possible that my complaint about it being too rich will be a bad take. It might be that, you know, this is like saying that, you know, there's too many notes and pet sounds. I don't know. I can't tell, you know. I try to review these things within a week. So we'll see how I feel about this after a couple months. So what does this sound like? You know, I was trying to think about how to approach this. And if you've seen my thumbnail and you see what's behind me, you know where this is going. I've spoiled the ending. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's cousin. But I was trying to think about like how to sort of place this band and how do I feel about them. Initially, I was like, oh, why don't I just do a sort of Athens, Georgia thing? Because, you know, Athens, Georgia, when I was growing up, was like the way that Seattle was for people. Athens, Georgia had a similar feel. And that's where REM was from, and that's where B-52s were from. And in a way, I like both bands. I like B-52s, you know, camp, fun music, especially Rock Lobster, an amazing song. REM, a band, I think I own every single one of their albums, but I've never actually loved them as a band. It's kind of weird. But you know, like a kind of nice mixture, sort of like self-seriousness and kind of campy fun. I think if you mix together REM and B-52s, it might look a little something like Of REM, but that was too much of a push. What I ended up landing on, and what you see in my title, is that I think, and this is coming from somebody who is listening to Of Montreal literally for the first time, okay? So maybe this is a common take. Maybe this is what everybody says. I don't know. I think he is quite potentially the true heir to David Bowie. I'm not saying, I never said he was as good as Jesus Christ or greater than Jesus Christ. I'm not saying that he is better than David Bowie or even as good or as monumentally important. I'm sorry, sometimes I say he, sometimes I say they. I'm referring to the band. I can't tell if the band is just one person or not. I can't quite figure that out. Based on the little bit of research I did, it seems like it may just be about Kevin Barnes or maybe about Of Montreal, so I can't quite tell. I'm going to be speaking about Of Montreal as Kevin Barnes here, as the only member who's been around since I started ignoring them back in the 90s. To make things more confusing, I'm not sure of their preferred pronoun either, so I'm just going to try to stick with they, but I may say he at times. The pronoun question is going to come into the album, by the way, so stay on target, Monsieur Payne. So I think a true heir to David Bowie can't like ape David Bowie, right? Like you can't just try to sound like David Bowie. And I don't think Of Montreal tries to sound like David Bowie. In some ways, there's enough sonic resonance that I think it's worth mentioning, right? I mean, especially in the singing, the ability that Bowie has to sing in many different modes, to be attacking, to be kind of soft, certain tricks that Bowie employs, Kevin Barnes employs here, especially like a sort of like an unexpected flat note somewhere, or a kind of metallic, like a metallic belt that Bowie is able to get, mixing those things kind of together, messing around with sort of multiple lowered voices or raised voices, kind of harmony all together. And those things are similar. But the reason that I really think about this as being like Bowie isn't really the way that it sounds. And when I say Bowie, by the way, I don't mean Hunky Dory or Ziggy Stardust. I mean like Low and After, like Brian Eno and After, sort of late stage David Bowie, the most interesting stuff. You could say it's because of the simple reason of pop rock mixed with electronic stuff, which Bowie does really well, which does here. This idea that the voice is very good, but it's not amazing. It's the feeling of this sort of avant-garde push. And there's so much to it. Like there's so much to this artistic push that's in this album that reminds me of something like Outside, probably my second or third favorite David Bowie album, which came out right as Of Montreal was starting. This kind of like mixture of genres and like this trying to say something but not making it too clear, and this beautiful voice mixed in at the same time, a very confusing sexuality presentation here, okay? So I actually embarrassed to admit that I've never done this in my entire life, typed in someone's name and then sexuality question into Google. But after reading the lyrics and trying to figure this out, he was like, kept on talking about like girlfriends and I'm queer for you and all these things and these pronouns and true scum, all these words that were being thrown out there. I don't think, I'm not going to give you the answer, by the way. I'm not going to give you the answer that I found because I don't like the answer. Because I think the question is what makes it interesting. That's part of what made David Bowie so amazing. Is he gay? Did he sleep with Mick Jagger? Can you sleep with Mick Jagger and not be gay? Like, what is it? Like this kind of like very gay and straight at the same time energy that David Bowie was able to put forth. Very few artists are able to put it forth very well at all. And I'd say Kevin Barnes is able to do it. This kind of glam fluidity. And there's also a lot of glam to this as well. Like a lot of kind of like sharp feels, very avant-garde, very odd. And he jumps, or they jump through genres with alacrity, with a lightness. Just like, okay, this is kind of a punk song. Okay, this is kind of a rock song. Okay, this is kind of a industrial song. Like everything kind of just sort of jumps around. And this mixture of just avant-garde sensibility with great studio musicianship, no sloppiness whatsoever. The whole time you had the feeling that when Kevin Barnes is singing, they're winking and leering and jeering all at the same time, the same way that David Bowie was able to do that. And finally, David Bowie, you may not believe this, was much older than I am. And based on my research, Kevin Barnes is older than I am as well. But Kevin Barnes and David Bowie are always younger than me. Like, there's some feeling that David Bowie had where no matter how old he was always younger than you. Because he was always so alive, so artistically, even up to his death. Even on his album where he's singing about dying, he has this youth to him that has nothing to do with age. And I get that sense from Of Montreal as well. It's not just that he's making very, modern references, but that is part of it. But it just feels just very young and alive. So there's my controversial take. Could you please tell me if you are a Of Montreal fan? Is this a thing that you all talk about on your message boards and like, oh, welcome to the party, Professor? Is this something that Kevin Barnes tries to do? Is this just totally self-evident or not? Because I find it very interesting and it's a very high compliment, but it's also not. It's also just a description, I think. Okay, so let's actually get into the album. I talked a lot. Someone left a comment on one of my videos saying, breathe, Professor. That's why I've integrated the coffee cup into my videos. I don't edit. I don't write scripts. I have notes. So I just kind of go. It's like when I teach classes. I just go. So it's good to take a break. Breathe, Professor. I already had to send the dogs upstairs. They were driving me crazy. All right. So I'm going to give you my homework. This is a song for you to listen to get an idea of what this album sounds like, what it's about. I'm going to include a link to it up there. Please go listen to it if you haven't heard this band and then come back. Or listen to the rest of the album and say, screw this Professor guy, this music rules, okay? The name of the song I'm choosing as an example is And We Can Survive Anything If We Fake It. Already, okay, I'll get to the title in a second. Musically, this is very typical in the way that not everything sounds like this, but it's very busy, very confusing, automated synthesizer sounds come in with some claps and some vocal percussions going some drum machine notes coming in here. This very complicated tapestry, this fabric of rhythm, this wall of sound and layers, and then this bass always going. I would love to have just the stems of the bass of this album. I bet that'd be really fun to listen to. If you listen to it on headphones, it's a totally different experience. All these disjointed sounds is oddly resolving, like things you don't think are going to resolve, and they do. After Kevin Barnes sings the title, And We Can Survive Anything If We Fake It, there's like this almost guitar, like Queen-style guitar line, like harmonized guitar lines playing. And then it all ends with this weird outro with this down-pitched doubled voice and these claps and these boops and these breaks. And it's just, the whole thing is a great microcosm of the entire album. It's exhaustingly exhilarating, okay? That's not on my notes, by the way. I just came up with that right now. Exhaustingly exhilarating. That's not as catchy as the Heir to David Bowie, but that would be a good title for this review. Lyrically, it has a great example of the album. I mean, the title itself, And We Can Survive Anything If We Can Fake It, if we fake it. that is meaningful. You know, that is a smart line that is also meaningful, right? Like, to survive, you have to fake. There's a certain degree to which in existence you have to fake things in order to make things through. So we can survive anything if we can fake it. I don't know exactly what it means, but it feels true and feels meaningful, especially in these strange times in which the relationship between reality and truth is constantly in question. Lots of great lyrics here. Fuck me, I'm a hologram. I don't really know what that means, but it's very much of the time. Kind of a Bowie style chorus. The way that Kevin Barnes sings, everything has that kind of woozy Bowie sound. You know, a lot, like especially the way the chorus is sung. It's not really the chorus, it's more the second part of the song. So many of these lyrics, like unmask the true scum. So much of these lyrics, like I was saying, how much Kevin Barnes is like modern versus not. Like, so many of these lyrics are about right now feelings. Like the lyric that repeats over and over again, lovers leap where edgelords fear to trend. All these terms like edgelords and trending, it's very much of the moment. It's very clear that whoever of Montreal is online and is paying attention to the changes in our society that are happening online. Not to belabor the point, but David Bowie was never content understanding that the world was fixed in 1974 and repeating that vision back to itself. He was successfully able to understand the changes in society and reflect those changes to the society back. That's what I'm hearing here. Lots of kind of super smarty references on here, like, ooh, a kind of weird cinema reference here. I was experienced on Gaspar's Mountain, and now I'm a giallo kill. I assume that's a reference to Gaspar Noé, the great and disturbing French filmmaker. Giallo, Italian horror movies. I don't quite get what it is, but that's another aspect to this, where it is a little bit snooty. It is a little bit for the educated class. You know, I know what he means by giallo. Then the end of the song, it's cool because it ends with these weird, I was going to say psychedelic lyrics, and if you read anything about this band, and I read a very little, the word psychedelic comes up. But I would actually prefer the word surrealistic, because it doesn't feel like it's all like brightly colored, acid trippy, the psychedelic. It's more surrealistic, like unexpected juxtapositions that create something meaningful, but that you can't quite define. You know, like that to me is a lot more powerful than just simply psychedelic. The kind without gentrification of libido, in which no one is smiling into their phones. Just like this idea of gentrification, libido, these words, how do they kind of go together? And then at the end of this little weird outro, we have the title of the album, and the thing which made me realize, no, this is not smarter than it is heartfelt. It's just hard to get to the heartfelt part. They say, the title, I Feel Safe With You, Trash. That's the title of the album, and that is also the concept of the album. This album talks about COVID quite often. COVID is mentioned in this song, feeling bad about COVID summer. It talks about edgelords on the internet. It talks about people being attacked on the internet. It talks about the social rift. It talks about our times as being unsettling and unpleasant in kind of an oblique way, not in a preachy way. And it's very clear that the way out is this love. And the love is for trash. Whoever trash is, their wife, their girlfriend, I don't know. I don't even know if they're married, their boyfriend. I don't know anything about Kevin Barnes. Whoever it is that Kevin Barnes is talking about is the way out. That's the way I see this. I see this as a love album, like an actually heartfelt love album. It's just calling it trash, calling the one that you love trash, which is also kind of a modern thing. So that's the concept, I believe. Love through difficult times. Love conquers all, essentially. Even COVID. Even idiots and trolls on the internet. Love conquers all. But it's told in this very weird, disjointed way that makes you uncomfortable. I'm going to go through the rest of the album as quickly as I can. It is a really long, very dense album. It starts off with the song Carton Aesthesis. I don't know what that means. And in Portuguese, for some reason, the words O Portão, which means at the gate, which reminds me of Wonderful Christmas Time by the Beatles if Thundercat were playing bass on it. I'll let you just kind of work on that. It seems kind of sloppy on purpose, but it all stays together. Layers and layers and layers of sound. Then, and we can survive anything if we fake it. Then the next track, Aries equals trash, a little bit more easy listening on this album. How do we know what we are when we don't know what we aren't? This was the first time listening to the album. I really had the feeling that reminded me of a low era Bowie, just the voice and the register and the artfully weird approach and the ability to change vocal register like that. It becomes weird and warm as well. This chorus, "We could be each other's eternal joy," is sung with each word making a melody that seems as though it was created randomly by a machine. We could be each other's eternal joy. Like, it's not even like that, better than that, but it's kind of an unmelody, but you'll never guess what keeps it all together. You'll never guess, while this thing, "We could be each other's eternal joy," what keeps it all together? The bass. Reality is a sloppy bitch who likes to intrude. I don't know what that means either, but it's a good lyric. Talking a little bit about even in hell, and then ends with kind of eternal joy all over the place. Just eternal joy. This is an album that is actually a hopeful, loving album. It's just kind of drenched in this weird 2020 soundscape of COVID and poison on the internet. Queer as Love, a beautiful, kind of catchy song. Starts off like robotic, and then these nice synthesizers come in. So many words. This is, I don't know, this is like, next to a rap album, this is the most words per second you are going to get on any album, or words per minute. A reference to Lars von Trier, more kind of depressing European cinema being mentioned here. The chorus is super weird, but great. "I'm queer for you, we're here for you, queer as love." I don't know what it means, but I like it. Great bass work. So here's the question. Is this I looked up the bassist name, Davy Pierce, or is this Kevin Barnes? Is this a Tame Impala situation where like he's playing everything, or are they actually a band? I don't know. Of Montreal fans, please tell me. Because either Davy Pierce or Kevin Barnes deserves a gold star. It's just great. Next track is called Now That's What I Call Free Wave. Is that what this music is called? Is that what this genre is? I wouldn't know what to call it. I would call it sort of avant-garde pop. I think that's what I would call it. I don't know. This is kind of rocking and metalish to start. A crazy construction for a song. Every time I look at my phone, I get brain damage, all these weird rhythm changes, and it's more about the COVID summer. Japanese Word for Witch is the next song. A little too wandering for me, not quite enough form, sort of a bossa nova feeling. Is there like a Brazilian thing? Did Of Montreal go to Brazil, and that's why there's a little bit of Portuguese here in bossa nova? I don't know. This is Exposed. Appears to be about like a gender expression song. Feels kind of Pixies-ish actually here, the way the music sounds, very kind of awesome drums and kind of a chunky bass sound. I'm liminal, I'm free. Call me he, call me she. I said I'm macho, I'm femme. Call me they, call me them. You see why I don't know what pronouns to use. Because Kevin Barnes literally says to call them everything. And I want to respect, but I don't know what the answer is. And it even talks about getting radicalized online in this song, about true scum and edgelords, and the voice is just so loud in the mix. You hear all these things, and ends with a kind of weird sort of reggae African rhythm thing with these lyrics, "Even in hell, people get offended." And then out of nowhere, we get some sick tap licks. So I got Aberdeen over here, so I'm going to show you what a tap lick looks like. So if you're gonna play tap licks, you're gonna be like Eddie Van Halen, So we have like tap licks on here. Not as good as I just played it, but pretty good. Like everything's on here. I'm tempted to say, if I was describing this to my older brother Ward, we talk a lot about music, I'd probably say this, and he'd probably go, "Ooh, tap licks too, like heavy metal, like all this mixture of genre. I don't know, that's not for me." But I would probably say to him, I'd say, no, but just actually like stick through, because it's better than it sounds. If you told me that like kind of like a weird faux death metal section would be on this album, I'd probably want to skip it, but don't. It's worth it. Next track, Notes of the Violet Spectates of a Flatter of Male, is a necessary downbeat song, kind of echoing his voice. Kind of nice. Equatorial Hemorrhage is a dead link. Dead link is another theme that comes in here, which is quite nice. Again, the way David Bowie was able to do, incorporating modern technologies and alienation that we feel while also offering an out through music and art and love is something that's done here. Very far out sleepy sounds in here. A great lyric, the sea doesn't have to give a fuck to keep its octopi alive. My wife, who's a scientist and also a little bit of a linguist, has told me many times, the plural of octopi is, of octopus, is octopuses. It's not octopi. It's not Greek. So anyways, 0 out of 10. It comes back with like a strange drum machine. It's quite nice. Leads into Yamagata forest flutes. Seriously, every title on this album. Continual, like it feels kind of a continual album. On the sort of second side, I'd already taken a break. Before Equatorial Hemorrhage is a Dead Link, I had to turn off the album and watch some YouTube. I don't know what. I took a break. I think I watched, I watched the new Thoughts line, or the newish Thoughts line. It was pretty good. I watched too much YouTube. But like, you know, so I took a break and I came back, and it seems as though the second side is a little bit more downbeat, which is nice. It's a little bit more connected. It's a little bit less of attack, 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 attack. We have the catchiest song with Extract the Masculine Germ from Remote Memory. Most kind of consciously 80s, singing over and over again, I just want to be killing you. And the B is accentuated in a very odd way. The next track, Thram Ramaged a Man Mod. I don't know what that means. Has these cool clicks like African guitars. I'm sorry, all day, yay. This even reminds me of Violent Femmes a little bit, the way that it sounds. And talking about his heart being their heart, her heart. Who cares? Kevin Barnes' heart, singer's heart. I mean, I care. Who knows is what I should have said. Who knows? My heart is a dead link. I should also mention that throughout this album, there's multiple discussions about pronouns. And I can't quite tell. I don't think. I am assuming, I'm acting on good faith in thinking that Kevin Barnes is not making fun of the pronoun question, right? This isn't mocking it, it's more commenting on it. But you could read it in a way of being sort of like, hey, who cares? This is all super goofy weirdness. I don't know. But I better just move on because that's not why people watch this channel. Next track is called Krang. Krangggggganng. It's a thing this album does, by the way. Like the titles are often oddly capitalized. It's kind of a feel. It's just sort of like, everything's kind of weird and thrown together. Super tight guitar and bass together, doing almost like a little ditty. You think it's going to be an instrumental. This nice gentle guitar comes in, kind of more funny sounds. This is where Kevin Barnes does that sudden flat trick that David Bowie does, like soldier. I don't really know how to say it, but it's a trick that David Bowie does that not many other people can pull off. Next track is called True Beauty Forever. That's another theme of this album, the nature of beauty and ugliness. More kind of the Bowie belting style, you know, the kind of, almost, I'm really bad with my imitations today. Well, actually, it wasn't. My John Lennon earlier wasn't too bad, but more discussion of gender fluidity. Negative space is mostly femme energy. The crucifixion of Christ was edge play until he got off. Just very sacrilegious, weirdly sexual. Oh no, actually, here's where I had to take a break. I'm sorry, I said it was before, but I actually wrote it in my notes. Exhausting. I had to take a break. It's true. I like this album, but it's a lot. Fuckheads is the Autocorrection is another song that seems to be about pronouns and the choice of pronouns. There's a beautiful lyric in here about being as alone as a pinball. That's my favorite lyric, maybe of the year, because pinballs are terribly alone, and they're just being thrown all over the board, and like you're interacting with it, but they're just being thrown out there. And there's a lot of metaphors to be drawn from a pinball. And thank you, Kevin Barnes. I just realized, I don't know if that's actually his name. I'm pretty sure it's Kevin Barnes. If it's not, the comment section is going to be a mess. Thank you, of Montreal, for finding this metaphor. It's really quite nice. Very weird chorus, kind of ethereal, an outro with these shattered sounds. Then we get to Drowner's Tears, the most 2020. Starts off with this weird part, then becomes an aggro, bizarre, high-pitched vocal thing. It could almost be hyperpop. It reminds me of Patricia Taxon or even 100 Gex or something. Just a sort of weird, super high energy, aggravating sound, but a little bit more maturity behind it. I don't know. And then all these layers come in at the end. Then we have the track, I Feel Sick. I tell you, do you see how long this album is? You're getting tired of this review. I don't blame you. I've been talking for like half an hour. I feel safe with you, Trash. Tons of sustained notes from this like keyboard. Lots of sustained notes in general on this album, which creates a unsettling feeling because it's like, when is it ever going to go? Nice funky drums, great bass work, almost a vaporwave sound with a distorted voice. Protest anthems are novelty songs. That's correct. That's a good way to put it. Protest songs are novelty songs. I like that. A kind of punky glam chorus, claps and sounds. This is the most sort of psychedelic sounding track on the album. Fingerless Gloves has like these children voices. Reminds me a little bit of Prince. Reminds me even a little bit of Midnight Vultures by Beck, the only Beck album that I like, but I love that album. I think it's great. Reminds me a little bit of that, sort of a defined psychedelic metal part as well. And then this line, who needs a heart when heart does murder? It's not intentional, but it reminds me of the line, the heart's filthy lesson from David Bowie's Outside, which is the album that this reminds me of the most. Karl Heinz, Chop Up the Children. Oh my God, we're almost there, everybody. We're almost there. The new me is the old me's emotional janitor. This is the most kind of consciously weird song, I think. Everything's chopped up with these different genres, kind of a bass solo, almost a rap. It talks about music itself, references Radiohead. The tempos and styles keep on changing. There's no one style at any point. Abstract and unsettling lyrics keep coming in with like a weird bossa nova beat at times. A sort of self-harmony, off harmony. Again, in the Bowie style, comes in. Weirdly political lyrics. The CIA killed the Black Panthers. That's the real war on Christmas. Which, by the way, I love this line. I'm going to save this until... This, I think, should be put on the internet with great frequency. The CIA killed the Black Panthers. That's the real war on Christmas. That's a perfect line. It's a non sequitur. It's that surrealist thing, right? Where things are juxtaposed that don't go together, but they reveal something else. Although, obviously, it's conscious, not unconscious. And then repeats the line that happens a lot on the album, lovers leap where edgelords fear to trend. Over and over again, this seems to talk about. And this seems to be partly love versus the edgelords. That might be the defining struggle of our time. Love versus the edgelords. The edgelords on anywhere where there's someone who's being an edgelord, they're usually being toxically masculine, destructive, performative, hateful, and divisive, right? Doesn't matter what kind of edgelord you are. So yeah, lovers leap where edgelords fear to trend. This is great. Of Montreal has great lyrics. Then we end with the 2020 love anthem, So Chill, Then. O Portao, the last track, At the Gates Again. Double pitch down voices. Again, reminds me a little bit of that Outside album by Bowie. Everything is psychedelic. Everything is a bad trip. These are the lyrics. I don't really have a feeling about it. I mean, I have a feeling and I don't care. A horror poem unfolds and our love absorbs it. I talk a lot on this channel about being happily in love. It's nice being happily in love. It's really nice loving your wife and having a good relationship. This is how I felt in 2020, okay? Everything is a bad trip and I don't really have a feeling about it. There's a weird thing about this COVID era where my emotions have kind of shut off. In the election cycle, like I just kind of just flitzed out, you know? I just made up words. I flitzed. Did you flitz? Put in the comments and like if you flitz. And like, I have all these feelings and it's a horror poem. It is. COVID is a horror poem that's unfolding and our love absorbs it. Like, it absorbs it because it keeps us protected, but also it hurts us and we have to stay strong. And I feel safe with her. I wouldn't call her trash, but you know, I think that's the idea. So who knows? What do you think of my take? I don't know. This has been really fun. I've really enjoyed it. I'm very happy that I got over the fact that this is not really a band of Montreal. I'm able to forgive them for that because they're a really great band or a really great person. I don't know. Okay. Well, I have to go off and prepare my lessons for tomorrow, Act 3 of the Bourgeois Gentilhomme, if you're reading at home. There's the camera.